September 1944. The Allies believed the war could be over by Christmas. One bold plan would change everything. Operation Market Garden, the largest airborne assault in history. Thousands of paratroopers, dozens of bridges, and one bridge too far. This is the story of a gamble that nearly broke the Allied advance forever. By late summer 1944, the Allied armies were racing across Western Europe. Paris had fallen. Belgium was liberated. Germany itself seemed within reach. General Bernard Montgomery proposed a daring plan, a single concentrated thrust deep into the Netherlands and across the Rhine into the heart of the Reich. The plan was codenamed Operation Market Garden. Market was the airborne phase, 3 full divisions dropping from the sky. Garden was the ground phase, the 30th Corps driving 60 miles through enemy territory along a single raised highway. Both had to succeed perfectly. There was no margin for error. On September 17, 1944, the skies over the Netherlands turned black. Over 1,500 transport aircraft and 500 gliders released nearly 35,000 Allied paratroopers in one single afternoon. It was the most spectacular airborne operation the world had ever seen, and German commanders watched in stunned disbelief. The American 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, landed near Eindhoven and Veghel. Their mission: capture the canal bridges and hold the road open for the 30th Corps. They fought house by house, street by street. Most of their objectives were taken within hours, but the road ahead was far from safe. Further north, the 82nd Airborne, the All-Americans, dropped near Nijmegen and Grave. Their critical objective was the massive Nijmegen Bridge over the River Vaal. German resistance was fierce. The bridge was heavily defended. Every hour of delay cost lives, and time was the one thing the Allies did not have. At the northern tip of the operation lay Arnhem, the bridge that mattered most. The British 1st Airborne Division landed miles from their target. Communication failed almost immediately. Only one battalion, led by Lieutenant Colonel John Frost, reached the bridge and dug in against overwhelming odds. What the Allies did not know was catastrophic. Resting near Arnhem were 2 veteran SS Panzer divisions, the 9th and 10th, refitting after brutal fighting in France. Intelligence warnings had been ignored. British paratroopers armed with light weapons now faced Tiger tanks and hardened Waffen-SS troops. Frost's battalion held the northern end of Arnhem Bridge for 4 days. Surrounded, outnumbered, with no food, no water, and dwindling ammunition, they refused to surrender. Buildings burned around them. Men fought from rubble and shell craters. It was one of the most heroic stands of the entire war. On the ground, the 30th Corps thundered north along a single highway, a road the paratroopers called Hell's Highway. But German forces attacked from both sides, cutting the supply line again and again. Convoys burned. Bridges collapsed under shell fire. The armored advance slowed to a crawl. The battle for Nijmegen Bridge became one of the most desperate actions of the campaign. On September 20th, American paratroopers of the 82nd Airborne crossed the wide River Vaal in flimsy canvas boats under devastating machine gun fire. Dozens were killed crossing, but they took the far bank and the bridge held. With Nijmegen finally secured, British tanks moved north toward Arnhem. But they stopped for the night just miles from Frost's surrounded men. The decision remains controversial to this day. Those final miles, so close, yet so impossibly far, would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. By September 21st, Frost's position at Arnhem Bridge collapsed. Wounded, exhausted, and out of ammunition, the last defenders were overwhelmed. Frost himself was captured. Of the battalion that had held the bridge against an entire SS division, fewer than 100 men walked away unharmed. The rest of the 1st Airborne Division was surrounded in a shrinking perimeter around the village of Oosterbeek. German artillery pounded their positions without mercy, day and night. Supply drops by the RAF fell behind enemy lines. The men fought from ruins, cellars, and shell craters, exhausted, starving, and running out of ammunition. But they refused to give up. On the night of September 25th, the order finally came: withdraw across the Rhine. Under cover of darkness and pouring rain, the survivors waded into the freezing water. Of nearly 10,000 men who had dropped 9 days earlier, fewer than 2,500 made it back to Allied lines. Over 1,400 were dead. Thousands more were wounded or taken prisoner. The Dutch civilians of Arnhem paid a devastating price for the battle fought in their streets. After the German victory, the entire population was ordered to evacuate immediately. Homes were looted and burned to the ground. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. The people of Arnhem would not be allowed to return to their city until the very last days of the war in 1945. Why did Market Garden fail so catastrophically? The drop zones were placed too far from the objectives. Radio communications broke down within the first hour. Warnings about SS Panzer divisions near Arnhem were ignored by commanders, and the 30th Corps was funneled down a single raised highway with no room to maneuver, a road the paratroopers would call Hell's Highway for good reason. General Montgomery later claimed that Market Garden had been 90% successful. Those words were never forgiven by the men who fought and bled at Arnhem. They had been promised relief within 2 days. They held for 9. They had done everything asked of them, and more. They were failed not by courage, but by a plan that was simply too bold and too flawed to succeed. Operation Market Garden cost the Allied forces over 17,000 casualties in just 9 days of brutal fighting. The Rhine crossing that Montgomery had promised would end the war by Christmas was not achieved until March 1945, a full 6 months later, at a cost of tens of thousands more lives on both sides of the front line. The men of Arnhem became legends in their own lifetime. Every single year, the grateful people of the Netherlands lay flowers at the graves of the fallen paratroopers, a debt of honor that has never been forgotten. In a war filled with extraordinary acts of courage and sacrifice, the men who held the bridge against impossible odds stand among the bravest soldiers who ever lived. German armor was burning across the Ardennes. Tank after tank was destroyed by Allied firepower and airstrikes. The once unstoppable Wehrmacht was hemorrhaging men and machines it could never replace. Every burning wreck marked the death of Hitler's final dream. Allied aircraft filled the skies over Bastogne. Supplies, ammunition, and reinforcements rained down on the besieged 101st Airborne. The encircled Americans refused to surrender. When asked to give up, General McAuliffe gave his legendary reply: "Nuts. Bastogne would hold, and Germany would lose." Outro: Operation Market Garden, the boldest airborne plan in history, a bridge too far, and a generation of young men who gave everything they had. If this video moved you, please subscribe to BattleAndEmpire and leave a comment below. Could Market Garden have succeeded? We read every single comment. See you at the next battle.